It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you.
Hello, and welcome to Accelerate. I'm excited to talk with my guest today. Joining me is Brandon Redlinger from PersistIQ. Now, there continues to be an incredible amount of innovation in the whole sales technology space. New applications, new uses of technologies, sometimes what we call sales hacks, if you will, are appearing daily. And the goal for most of these is to increase both the efficiency and the effectiveness of your sales efforts. And I define effectiveness in sales being doing the right thing, and efficiency is doing the right thing right. And right in the case of sales is how do you generate more revenue per hour of selling time? So a good question to ask is, what's in your sales stack? Or what should be in your sales stack to improve your sales productivity? And our guest today, Brandon Redlinger, is going to help us sort that all out. Brandon, welcome to the show.
Great. Thank you so much for having me, Andy.
Well, so thanks for being here. So tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, so a little bit about me. Before I got into sales, I was actually a health and wellness professional, personal trainer. I was training professional and semi-professional triathletes, and then
really, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So in a past life, I was kind of this health nut, this health guru, and I was trying to actually get my business off the ground itself. And I thought that all I had to do was get my nutrition certifications, my health coach certifications, all these trainings done, hang my shingle out, and people would come to me. And not quite the case. So, struggled a little bit, and then kind of fell into the more business side of things. And that's when I really kind of fell in love with sales and marketing. And then from there, I dove head in and almost to the point where I started to neglect my the personal training, the health side of things, and got all the way into the business side. Got a job in New York in sales, and that was kind of my introduction. Doing health and wellness sales in New York. Did that for a while. Went through the whole SDR track. Then was an AE for a while, and then lead AE, and then wanted to shift my focus a little bit to the marketing side of things to get a really full-rounded education on business growth. So took over the marketing for a small startup, and then did that for a few years, then jumped over to PersistIQ, where I help on the sales and the marketing side. So I do a lot of the marketing efforts, but a lot of what we do too involves me on the sales side.
Right, and then that whole process you sort of neglected to mention that you then moved from New York to California.
That is correct. So I am in the Bay Area now.
Got it. And have you completely neglected your health now as being in a startup? I mean, are you a couch potato, or are you still able to be engaged in your fitness activities?
I still work out 6 days a week. I luckily have a girlfriend who is just as committed to health as I am, and she actually went through a few trainings herself. So I think if it weren't for her, possibly I could easily get lost in that,
All right. Well, I asked that question, even though we've met before, so I know that you work out, but I thought I'd just throw that out there. So yes. Let's talk about the sales stack. So yes. We talked about that in the open to the show. I think this is a term that a lot of sales leaders and entrepreneurs and business owners and so on are unfamiliar with, but it's gaining a lot of currency, and it's important that I think they understand what it is. So what is a sales stack?
Yeah, sales stack is really the technology, the tools that a sales team uses to effectively execute against their sales process. So it's really helping you being more effective and more efficient in their selling process.
And it's not just one application. Hence the stack. It could be more than one. It could be a series of sales technologies, sales applications that you use.
That's exactly it. Yep.
So it's not a replacement for a sales process, though.
No, it always starts with the sales process, and I think a lot of people kind of do it backwards, right? They go out there, they're looking at the new tools, the new technologies that are popping up every day, and I know the lure of that because there are so many cool things going on out there with technology advancing so much right now in the sales space that they kind of get distracted and they get drawn away from what really matters, which again is the sales process. So I always think it starts with the process, and then whichever tools help you execute the best against your process is really how you should be building your sales stack. Not let's go find the tools and then kind of figure out our process from there.
So how does someone define, well, first, how do they define their needs? I guess, it's one thing to have a process, but I think it's a stretch for some people to be able to understand, okay, we've got this process, but how do we overlay the technology to it? So how does somebody that's really not so familiar with this, how do they go about defining what their needs are? And then secondly is, how do they prioritize which part of the stack comes first?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it really is trying to figure out, where you are in the market, and really, I guess, kind of breaking it down into, okay, what are our goals and how we really gonna get there? So for us, we try to keep it really as simple as possible, and we have our SDRs, and we have our AEs, and we have our CSM, or customer success managers, and account managers. And then it's really breaking that out. Okay, what are the jobs to be done by each of those? And then, of course, working off of our metrics and how are they going to achieve those metrics, and then kind of giving them the tools to help do their job more effectively, more efficiently.
And between your SDRs, your AEs, customer success managers, assume somebody has that sales development, sales model. Do you prioritize, and you don't have unlimited resources, in your case, I'm going to take your case, PersistIQ. How do you prioritize where you're going to invest the technology in first? Is it in the SDRs, developing the prospects, or is it in the AEs? How do you make that decision?
That's a really good question. So I think it comes back to, so we always start with kind of the CRM, right? So that's the system of record. That's a place where the SDR, the AE, the CSM, anyone management can go look at an account and figure out where it is at in the sales process and kind of what's going on.
So CRM sort of becomes the base of the sales stack for most companies?
Yeah, I think it has to be, right?
Okay.
So that is the one place where it should be consistent across all of your roles. So to figure out what's going on, all they have to do is jump into the CRM itself, and setting up your CRM correctly in the first place it is very important too. A lot of people just throw things together, try to figure out how it goes. But I think it goes back to like sales process. Let's make sure our CRM fits the sales process, and then from there, you can start to layer on top, build that sales stack. Okay, great. Now, once we have our CRM in place, the first step is to generate leads. All right, what's going to be the most effective tool that's going to help us generate our leads? Are we an inbound or an outbound model? And then from there, it's, goes over to the AEs. And the AEs, how can they most effectively, demo the product? How can they effectively send out their sales collateral? How can they effectively send out their contracts, get those back? How can the customer success team now effectively track the engagement of your users, or maybe people on a trial, and then really onboard them easily and help them become successful at what they do? So I think that's what it's all about, right? Is helping your customers be successful and enjoy the process.
Right. And so, taking a step back, said CRM sort of the base level of the stack is, it seems like really critical at that step, that to make sure that, as you said, that it's configured appropriately for what you're doing, but also that there is adoption, uniform adoption of the technology across your sales force. Because if you start adding onto the stack and your team isn't using your CRM system the way that you've set it up to be used, then you've got a real problem.
Yes. So yeah, adoption is definitely a tricky thing, and one of the things that at PersistIQ, how we built our product for adoption was we really wanted a clean, simple, intuitive UI, right? So it's we put a lot of effort into building our product and making it intuitive and easy for the end user to actually use. So that's one thing that people love about our tool over some of the others out there. Our platform is that an SDR, a new SDR just coming on, can easily just ramp up really quick. So they don't have to spend months training on the platform. It's actually pretty intuitive, how to set it up, how to actually get their work done every day. So I think the tools that get easily adopted are the simpler tools, the tools that don't overcomplicate things, don't put extra bells and whistles, don't put extra distractions in place, and then you'll be able to use your platform more effectively in your sales process.
Well, you sort of touch on something I think is really a key point, which is that if you're a business owner, CEO, sales leader, you're evaluating what are the right set of tools to you. And let's start with, hopefully you're just looking at one to start with. Identifying those things that as you sort of attributes you sort of like easy to use, easy to train people on. It has to be something that you have to be able to measure pretty quickly whether or not it's doing the task that you set out for it to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So I think that's really a critical thing that a lot of times companies don't really understand, because there's a real opportunity cost to you if you make the wrong choice and you've implemented a solution, especially if you're a small business or you're a startup, because you could have the real risk of losing some serious momentum in the marketplace. You wouldn't necessarily think so, but you can if your CRM system, and you sort of depend on it, just isn't functioning or isn't being used the way it needs to be used.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think, have you ever done the exercise of, it's been done with like stones in a jar before, where you put all the small stones in first, and then you put the medium-sized ones in, and then the big ones don't fit in. And then, you pour them all out, then you start with the big stones and then the medium stones, and then you put the small stones in to fill in all the little cracks, and then everything, fits in that jar.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think the same thing kind of goes with your sales stack, right? You put the major building blocks in first, and then you start to fill in with some of the smaller tools, and then you'll end up, adding these sort of like nice to haves at the end. So maybe it's an email finder, or maybe it's, this little Chrome extension that kind of gives you a little bit more speed when you're prospecting, or whatever it may be. So I think, it's really starting with those building blocks first, and then kind of adding the smaller pieces in, kind of filling in the cracks.
Well, one of the questions I get a lot of the time from people who listen to the show and people that follow me on social media and other places is that they're intrigued by a lot of these tools that are coming out, like PersistIQ, but it seems like their only choice, if they want to use PersistIQ, is they have to adopt Salesforce.com, which is a great system, but for some companies a certain size, it could be overkill for what they need, and yet a lot of the apps don't integrate with anything other than Salesforce. So what's your sort of response to that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, again, just figuring out what's going to be the best for you and your company at that stage. So yeah, maybe you're not quite ready for a Salesforce.com. You might need to go with something a little smaller, maybe a little lighter weight, built for a smaller sales team. Maybe it's Close.io, and a lot of technologies out there do have other integrations, whether it be through Zapier, or maybe they have, like, PersistIQ has an open API, so you and your sales team can dev out an integration. So it really is becoming easier to patch together all these tools so that they can talk to each other. But yeah, if Salesforce isn't right for you, then don't feel pressured to go with Salesforce or go with one of these these, bigger name brands.
So what you're saying is that, and just to make clear for people listening, is that increasingly, platforms like PersistIQ, you said, have an open API, so that you can farm out a development to integrate with some other CRM platform that may be more tailor-made for what you do. Maybe something that has like a vertical market oriented CRM. You want to use PersistIQ and the CRM. There's a way to make that happen.
Right, exactly. Yeah, sales not, made based on the tools. It's made through the process that the reps and the company uses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the tools just make it a little bit more scalable, a little bit more manageable.
Like it. Okay, great. Well, we're going to come right back. We're going to talk some about PersistIQ when we come back with my guest, Brandon Redlinger. And we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Hi, this is Andy. Connect and Sell is used by sales reps at nearly 1,000 companies, including hundreds of technology startups and several Fortune 500 companies, to overcome the challenges of getting prospects on the phone. Companies using Connect and Sell grow their revenues faster by enabling their sales reps to have more sales conversations in 90 minutes than they could otherwise achieve in an entire week. Connect and Sell can be deployed directly to your sales reps, or you can take advantage of their outbound on-demand service, which delivers qualified prospect meetings scheduled directly on your sales reps' calendars. Visit connectandsell.com to learn more about how Connect and Sell can start filling your pipeline today.
All right, welcome back. I'm talking with my guest, Brandon Redlinger from PersistIQ. We've been talking about how you build your sales stack. And I know this is something that can be a bit confusing for a company that's sort of wading into the technology pool. It's interesting, given sort of the amount of specialization that's occurring, it seems like in the sales process, right? I mean, we've got, especially in the SaaS space, software as a service space, you've got the sales development model, I call it, with SDRs doing the prospecting, setting up appointments, the AEs taking it through to a close, and customer success and account managers handling it after the fact and handling renewals and upsells and cross-sells. It seems like there's starting to be some overlap between technologies. For instance, like email tracking applications,
Mm-hmm.
like Yesware or ToutApp, that they would do pre-scheduled automated emails, and then there's these sales development platforms, which PersistIQ is one that you can set up automated workflows and
Mm-hmm.
email campaigns, and then we've got marketing automation systems out there that sort of support the same functionality. So what's going to happen here? What's your vision of the future in terms of how this all sort of gets sorted out? Because increasingly there's sort of less an overlap and intersections between all these various types of platforms.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, where is this space going? I think you're right. It seems like everyone is trying to do all things, and they want to do it across, from start to finish. Start being generating the leads to finish all the way to closing, and maybe even, maintaining those accounts. But I think the future really lies in making sure one company does their one job really well before moving on to something else. So in this space, we've seen a lot of people try to do all things, but they do all things, just okay.
Right.
And that's kind of why the space is getting really crowded, in my opinion. So I think, do one thing really well at first, and then kind of start to move on to, okay, great, how can we help the reps be, again, more successful at what they're doing? And then maybe it's starting to overlap into, so we're really built for an SDR, as I mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we start to, once we nail that, maybe we start to build out more functionality for the AE. And once we really nail that, maybe we can move on to customer success or whatever.
So how would you give guidance then to somebody that's looking at making this investment in their sales stack? They've got their CRM system. They're now saying, okay, we're going to take the next level up. Maybe they were looking at email tracking, but they say, I can get email tracking in my sales development platform. And given this, how do they sort it out? What would you give them sort of the one or two key things they should look at if they're evaluating a product service in this space to help them make a decision about which way to go?
Yeah, I mean, I think we already kind of hit it on the head with just like matching your sales process, and then making sure your people adopt it correctly. I mean, other than that, I don't think there's that much use for trialing every single thing out there, and spending too much time evaluating everything. Because I think there is something to be said for, like, let's just implement this and figure out how we can best utilize this. Because I think, especially in an early stage company, it matters what you spend your time doing. So, if you spend your time, months trying to play around with this one tool, and then they figure out, maybe we want to try something else, and they spend months trying to implement something else and change their process, and that's a lot of time wasted for a company. So I think there is like a balance, right? So let's actually just choose something that we think works best right now and fully implement it and fully get on board, rather than, all right, let's play around with all of these things. Because we've run into companies before that, are trying 5 different tools at once at the same time as PersistIQ.
Right.
That's not helpful for them.
No, and you're absolutely right. I mean, it's a trap a lot of companies fall into, a lot of individuals fall into. It's just trying to get the perfect solution when there's no real incremental value or marginal value that you get from choosing what you think is the perfect thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I think there's a diminishing return on your time at some point. So I think you really just got to commit and go. And then, maybe a few quarters later, you reevaluate. And, as your team grows, as your company grows, and as the market changes, maybe the tool or the platform that works best for you does change. But I wouldn't really try to change it too frequently,
No. All right. I think it's good. Good answer in terms of not being too hung up on perfection. So, so let's talk for a second about PersistIQ and how it fits into the sales stack.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got your CRM system and you're focused on your SDRs, PersistIQ then surely is something that's sort of one of the first things you'd look at in terms of helping support your ability to prospect.
Yep, exactly. So PersistIQ is all about your outbound sales, trying to get in touch with those leads. And we really built a good use case right now for PersistIQ is these more targeted account selling. So that's kind of a hot topic right now. Something that we're really diving into is more your account-based sales development. I've heard it being called a lot these days. So it's all about trying to target the right people and really balancing personalization with automation. So a lot of people these days are obsessed about, like, let's automate, all of these amazing tools to help us automate everything. But I think we are over automating and actually stripping out the human element. And that's really what makes a great salesperson aside from just a good salesperson, right? They have that human touch, that real ability to connect with others. So that's the key to these more targeted account selling models, rather than just complete over automation. Because everyone knows these days when they get an automated email or an automated voicemail, right? And that just kills the deal. So we are, again, trying to balance automation with the human side of things.
So how do you do that? So give me an example of how that works with PersistIQ.
Yeah, so PersistIQ, queues up all of your outbound, say emails that you're going to be doing, and then it will run that mail merge. But before you send that mail merge out, you're able to review each individual email and jump in there. And, maybe you're in one of my campaigns, Andy, and, we saw each other at SaaStr. Before I send that out, I can actually jump in there and say, oh, great conversation at SaaStr. This is my takeaway from our conversation. And then send that out, and that was actually a personalized email. Because I can't say, great seeing you at SaaStr to another lead, right? Because it wouldn't make any sense. So it's, being relevant and fitting within the context.
Yeah, no, this whole issue of personalization is one that is a big one for me, because Yeah, I mean, there's sort of simple levels of personalization. Hey, you put somebody's first name in, but is there? I mean, even something the example you gave. I mean, yeah, I went to SaaStr, this conference. I got a bunch of emails from people that seemingly are personalized, but the fact is, all they've done is scan my badge, right?
You're right.
So, and they referred to the conversation they had at SaaStr, which there was no conversation.
Great talking to you at the booth, Andy.
Yeah, great talking to you at the booth. Exactly.
By.
That's a quote unquote from people I never spoke with. So, how do you make that personalization relevant in a way that people really see that it is personalized? And I think that's one of the real challenges here for sales development platforms. And I'm interested in your take on that.
Yeah. So I think the way we approach it, at least, is we want to make sure we do enough research on the prospect, or if we're at SaaStr or any other conference talking to people, we want to take as many notes as possible so that we can bring up the right things in our follow-up, so that it is obvious that we are personalizing these emails, that we are trying to connect with people at a real human level. So it's going back to kind of what you said a little earlier, right? There's the distinction that I make is customization is different than personalization. So anyone can customize an email. Anyone can run a mail merge and fill in first name and company. But I think recipients obviously know that they can read an email and be like, oh, all they did is switch out this first name with my first name, right? And it doesn't feel personal. Though it may look like a personal email, it doesn't feel personal. So to really personalize instead of just customize, it really is knowing your audience, knowing who you're actually sending it to. Mm-hmm. And if you're following up from a conference like SaaStr, where you have a lot of notes, it is a little easier to do. But if you are doing just a pure cold outbound email campaign, then you might have to spend a little bit more time prospecting, a little bit more time on their social media profiles or whatever, doing that research to dig up information to make it relevant. So,
yeah, I think that's really a key point. Is it's that extra level of effort that the rep has to put into it. I mean, it doesn't have to be half an hour. It can be a few minutes, less than a few minutes.
Right, exactly.
Just visit the social profiles, go to LinkedIn, and maybe it's what I like to do is in those cases is I want to try to find that one detail that will tell the person that I did actually look at something about them.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, it could be something as mundane as talking about the weather where they are. I mean, if you want to take a really simple, banal example, mm-hmm. but it does work because people understand that there was that one extra level of effort that was put into it, or maybe it's something they're the sports teams they follow, or something like that that you found from their Facebook page. Just that one little tidbit can make a huge difference.
Yeah,
because as I always like to say, you don't have to be 10% different or 15% different or 50% different than your competition. 1% different is sufficient enough.
Right, exactly. And I think being genuine too is going to be a key part of it, because I think a lot of people, especially if you're selling to other salespeople, they can kind of call you out on it sometimes. I was at SaaStr and I saw a guy wearing a New York Rangers hat, and I was like, "Yeah, go Rangers!" And he was like, "Are you saying that just to get me to come over here and talk?" It's like, "No, I'm actually a Ranger fan." He's like, "Okay, name 5 players on the team."
Well, that guy's a real cynic.
Totally. But I think sometimes that's how us salespeople are, right? And luckily enough, I am actually a huge Ranger fan. I was able to name 5 and more players on the team, and then start to talk to him about, a recent trade that they had and how they're doing in the playoff race. And then actually connecting with him opened him up. And then we got to talking about business and how PersistIQ might be able to help his team. Right. So I think it's actually being genuine at the same time. So it's not just like, hey, I saw you're from Arizona and you're a big Arizona State University fan. I hear they're doing really well right now. Go, Wildcats or whatever it is,
Sun Devils, just to let you know.
Sun Devils, sorry.
Wildcats are University of Arizona.
University of Arizona.
Okay, let's go. Be careful before you talk to somebody in Arizona. All right, so let's go to the last segment of the show, as I've got some standard questions I ask all my guests. And the first one's a hypothetical scenario that I ask everyone is, you've just been hired as a new sales leader at a company whose sales have stalled out, they're stuck, and CEO really wants things to get turned around in a hurry. So what 2 things would you do your first week on the job that would have the biggest impact?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing that you can do is really understand why sales have stalled, right? Why things aren't working. You can't come in and expect a quick fix. You can't put a Band-Aid over the problem and expect to get those results. So I think getting to the root of the problem really helps you make a lasting impact. Will really help turn sales around. And I think generally speaking, it's going to be a process problem or a people problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the way I look at it is, let's first start off with the process. And this is kind of what we've been talking about all along, right? And do we have the right sales process in place? A lot of times I think people, a sales process is going to be a lot different at a company that's at 1 million ARR than a company that's at 100 million, right? But a lot of times people at that 100 million ARR mark is using the same process as they were at that 1 million. So let's make sure we are using the right sales process. And then from there, you can kind of drill down a little bit and get a little bit more focus. Let's look at the health of the pipeline. Let's look at our pipeline metrics. Let's make sure we're getting quality opportunities. And then, once a process is in place, do we have the right people to execute against the process? And then are we giving our reps the right tools? And are they following the process for each of those tools? So I think first it's starting off at making sure we have the right sales process in place, and then going to people, right? Do we have the right people in place to execute against the process or our strategy? Is everyone on the same team? Do they work cohesively together as a team? Is everyone on the same page? Is everyone bought into the company? I think also there's something to be said about company culture, right? And then there are some more soft skills. Do they enjoy their job? Do they have friends at work? Do they feel valued at work? Are their voices heard? I think those are really important things that make reps happy at work, and we all know happy reps actually end up performing better. And in order to solve the people in the process problem, I think you're going to need some help. And I would start by talking with maybe some mid-level managers, because I think generally they have a good idea of what's going on in the company. And you have to be careful with bureaucracy and biases, but take everyone's thoughts in and try to objectively discern what's useful with the information that you get and how to move forward. Because I think it would be foolish for someone to think that they can just go into a company and turn around things on the very first day, right?
Right.
And frankly, I'd be a little skeptical myself of if someone came into PersistIQ and thought that they could turn the company around on day one. So going in, talking with a lot of people, and then taking that information and then from there figuring out, all right, do we have the right processes and do we have the right people?
Okay. All right, good. So some sort of rapid fire questions. You can give me one word answers if you want, or you can elaborate. So the first one is when you, Brandon, are out selling, what's your most powerful sales attribute?
I think it's curiosity and asking the right questions. And that's kind of the same thing, curiosity.
Okay. Who's your sales role model?
Many sales role models over the years. One that I keep coming back to, he's actually kind of an older school sales guy, more of a direct sales. Started it out in even MLM, actually. Dan Kennedy. Dan
Kennedy, okay. Yeah. Almost more of a marketing type guy from my perspective.
Yeah. I think he started off as a sales guy more on the marketing side, but also just kind of entrepreneurial in general.
Right. So what's one book, not sales book, but one book every salesperson should read, whether it's sales book or not?
Hopefully they're reading more than one book, right? But I think one of the ones that really got me started was Influence by Robert Cialdini.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of sales has to do with behavioral psychology, and I think that is the best book out there to start understanding behaviors and why people act the way they act.
Okay, great choice. So what music's on your playlist right now?
What music's on my playlist? That's a great question. My playlist is first, it's pretty small because I don't listen to that much music. I'm more of a podcast, more of an audiobook kind of guy. But I have a little bit of everything. And I'm kind of one of those guys who kind of likes to listen to music on loop.
All right. So what's on the loop? Give us a name.
Right now, it's Fight Song by Rachel Platten.
Okay, good. Well, that's going to be memorialized. Hope you're okay with that. That's going on the website. So, Fight Song. Okay. Last question then is what's one question you get asked most frequently by salespeople?
Yeah, it's what email should I send out? What tools should I use? It's kind of like a version of I guess everyone wants an easy answer to a complex problem, right? So, like, what's the best cold email I should send? How about that? That one's a one that I get all the time.
And what do you tell them?
I tell them the one that is most relevant to them, right? So it kind of goes back to what we were saying, doing the research and making it relevant to someone. So there's no one cold email that's going to get opened by everyone. There's no magic email, right?
No, there's no silver bullet.
There's no silver bullet. So do your research and figure out what's going to speak to them.
And test it.
And exactly.
And test it, right. All right, well, good. Well, Brandon, thanks for joining me. Brandon Redlinger, Head of Growth at PersistIQ. So how can people find out more about PersistIQ?
Yeah, it's just PersistIQ.com, and we keep a regular blog, too, that has a lot of great information for salespeople out there. It's just PersistIQ.com/blog, and you can also follow us at PersistIQ on the Twitter.
All right, the Twitter. All right, so again, thanks. And remember, friends, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you accelerate your success. And making Accelerate part of your daily routine is an easy way to do that. Then you'll make sure you don't miss any of my conversations with top business experts like my guest today, Brandon Redlinger, who shared his expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your business. So thanks for joining us. Until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.